5 years of silence. That was the price of the trauma Leo Valenti carried. His father, the most feared man in Chicago's underworld, had spent millions on specialists, therapists, and doctors. They all failed. But then, a drowning speech therapist in a crumbling clinic did the impossible with a simple plastic toy and a lullaby. She made the mute boy speak, but she didn't know that hearing his son's voice would trigger an obsession in the Mafia Don that went far beyond gratitude. He didn't just pay her bill. He bought her debt, he bought her building, and then he decided he was going to buy her. This isn't a fairy tale. This is the true story of how a speech therapist became the queen of the Valenti crime family. The rain in Chicago didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. Dr. Estela Ramirez stared out the window of her small clinic on 4th Street, watching the water streak against the glass. The open sign flickered with a dying buzz, much like her career. At 28, Estela was buried under 6 figures of medical school debt and a malpractice lawsuit she hadn't deserved, a parting gift from a vindictive ex-mentor at St. Jude's Hospital. Her private practice, Ramirez Speech and Hearing, was her last stand. And it was failing. The grandfather clock in the corner chimed 7 p.m. She was about to lock the door when the headlights cut through the gloom. 3 black Cadillac Escalades idled at the curb. They looked like sharks swimming in the rain. Estela's heart hammered against her ribs. She wasn't expecting patients. She certainly wasn't expecting a motorcade. The clinic door opened, triggering the cheerful little bell that sounded absurdly out of place as 4 men walked in. They were massive, wearing tailored coats that cost more than her car. They didn't speak. They simply lined the walls, hands clasped in front of them, eyes scanning the room for threats. Then, the center parted. Dexter Valenti walked in. Estela stopped breathing. Everyone in the city knew the face, even if they only saw it in blurred paparazzi photos or whispered regarding the shipping yards. Dexter Valenti, the capo, the head of the Valenti organization. He was taller than his men, with hair the color of midnight and eyes that looked like shattered ice. He wore a charcoal suit, perfectly pressed, unbothered by the storm outside. But it was what, or rather, who, he was holding that froze Estela in place. Clinging to Dexter's hand was a small boy, no older than 5. The child had the same dark hair as the father, but his eyes were wide, terrified, and darting around the room like a trapped bird. Dexter stopped in front of her desk. The air in the room grew heavy, suffocating. "Dr. Ramirez," Dexter said. His voice was a low rumble, devoid of warmth. "My associates tell me you are the best pediatric speech pathologist in the state, despite your recent fall from grace." Estela swallowed hard, her fingers gripping the edge of her desk. "Mr. Valenti, I'm closing for the night. I don't take walk-ins." Dexter didn't blink. "You do now." He gently nudged the boy forward. "This is Leo. He hasn't spoken a word since the incident at the harbor 2 years ago. Not a scream, not a whisper. Nothing." Estela looked at the boy. She saw the trauma etched into his small frame. The incident at the harbor was legendary news. A car bomb meant for Dexter that had killed his wife instead. Leo had been in the back seat. He had seen it all. "Mr. Valenti," Estela said, her voice trembling but gaining a shred of professional steel, "trauma-induced mutism isn't something you can fix with a quick visit. It takes months, years." "I have time," Dexter said, checking his watch, a platinum Patek Philippe. "Fix him. Name your price." Estela looked at the men guarding the door, then back at the terrifying man in front of her. She realized she didn't have a choice. It's not about price. It's about trust. If he's terrified, he won't speak. She walked around the desk, kneeling so she was eye level with Leo. The boy flinched, burying his face in Dexter's expensive trousers. "It's okay," Estella whispered. She didn't look at Dexter. She focused entirely on the child. "My name is Estella. It's loud outside, isn't it? The rain is scary." Leo didn't move. Estella reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, blue, wind-up bird. She wound it up and set it on the floor. The bird hopped clumsily, making a soft clack, clack, clack sound. Leo peeked. "He's lost," Estella said softly. "He's looking for his home." For 20 minutes, the clinic was silent except for the rain and the clicking bird. Dexter stood like a statue, watching. He had seen the best doctors in Switzerland and New York try to force the boy to talk, to bribe him, to scare him. This woman was doing nothing but playing. He was about to lose patience. Then the bird fell over. Estella didn't touch it. She looked at Leo. "Oh no, he's stuck." "What color is he, Leo? If we know his color, maybe we can help him." Silence stretched. The bodyguards shifted. Dexter took a step forward to end the session. Blull. Dexter froze. The sound was tiny, rusty, like a gate opening after a century. Leo pointed a shaking finger at the toy. "Be blue." The air left the room. Dexter Valenti, the man who controlled half the city's unions, looked as if he had been punched in the gut. He stared down at his son. "Leo," Dexter whispered. Leo looked up at Estella, not his father. "Bluebird." Estella smiled, tears pricking her eyes, not from fear, but from the sheer breakthrough. "That's right, Leo. It's a bluebird." She stood up, her knees shaking. She looked at Dexter. The ice in his eyes had cracked. For a second, he wasn't a monster. He was just a father. But the moment passed instantly, replaced by a calculating, predatory intensity. "You did in 20 minutes what others couldn't do in 2 years," Dexter said. "He needs therapy, Mr. Valenti. Consistent, safe therapy. That was just a crack in the dam." Dexter nodded slowly. He pulled a phone from his pocket and dialed a number. "It's done. Buy it." "Yes. All of it." He hung up. "I'll send the bill to your office," Estella said, just wanting them to leave so she could collapse. "There is no bill," Dexter said, stepping closer. He invaded her personal space, smelling of expensive cologne and gun oil. "I just got off the phone with the bank, Dr. Ramirez. I bought the building." Estella blinked. "Excuse me?" "I bought the building, and I bought your student debt from the collection agency. And the malpractice settlement." Dexter buttoned his jacket. "You don't have a clinic anymore, Estella. You have a private position." "You can't do that," Estella gasped. "I just did. You belong to the Valenti family now." He picked up Leo, who was clutching the blue bird. "Pack your bags. You're moving into the estate tonight." The drive to the Valenti estate in Lake Forest took 40 minutes. Estella sat in the back of the second SUV, sandwiched between 2 guards who smelled of peppermint and violence. She clutched her satchel, the only thing she had been allowed to bring. Inside were her laptop, a few clothes, and her therapy tools. She was in shock. In the span of an hour, she had gone from bankrupt to owned. The estate was a fortress. High stone walls, topped with cameras and sensors, surrounded a massive, sprawling mansion that looked more like a museum than a home. Iron gates groaned open, revealing a long driveway lined with ancient oaks. When the car stopped, Dexter was there to open her door. It was a gentlemanly gesture that felt like a threat. "Welcome home, Doctor," he said. "This isn't my home," Estella snapped, her fear turning into anger. "This is kidnapping." "This is employment with high security," Dexter corrected smoothly. "Leo needs you. He spoke to you. That makes you the most valuable asset in my life, and I protect my assets." He led her through the grand foyer. It was cold, filled with marble and shadows. There were no pictures on the walls, no warmth. It was a house of ghosts. "Your room is in the east wing, next to Leo's nursery," Dexter instructed, as a maid appeared to take Estella's coat. "You will have 24-hour access to the boy. You will eat with us. You will live here. Your salary is triple what you made at the hospital." "And if I refuse?" Estella asked, stopping in the middle of the hallway. Dexter stopped and turned. He loomed over her. "Then the bank forecloses on your parents' house in Ohio tomorrow. I bought their mortgage, too." Estella felt the blood drain from her face. "You investigated me. I know everything, Estella. I know about the falsified reports that got you fired. I know you were innocent. I know you send money to your sister for her rehab. I know you take your coffee black." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I don't leave things to chance. Leo is my heir. His voice is his power. You will give it back to him." Estella glared at him, hating him, yet undeniably trapped. "Fine. I do this for Leo, not for you." "That distinction is irrelevant to me," Dexter said. The first week was a blur of luxury and isolation. Estella worked with Leo every day. The boy was sweet, incredibly intelligent, and starving for affection. Dexter was rarely seen during the day, but at night the house came alive with the dark business of the Valenti family. Men coming and going, hushed phone calls, the occasional cleaning of a weapon in the study. Estella kept her head down. She made progress. Leo went from bluebird to more juice and good night, but the danger was closer than she thought. One evening, 2 weeks into her stay, Estella was in the kitchen getting a glass of water. It was late, past midnight. She heard raised voices in the library. She crept closer. The heavy oak doors were slightly ajar. "You're weak, Dexter," a voice shouted. It was a jagged, angry voice. Estella recognized it. It was Matteo, Dexter's younger brother. She had seen him once or twice, a man who smiled too much and had eyes that didn't smile at all. "The boy is broken. A mute Don cannot lead. We need to secure the line. If you won't remarry and produce a capable heir, the commission will look to me." "Leo is speaking." Dexter's voice was calm, deadly. "A few words to a nursemaid." Matteo scoffed. "He's damaged goods, just like his mother. You need to get rid of the weakness." "Touch my son," Dexter said, the sound of a glass shattering punctuating his words. "And I will bury you in the foundation of this house, Matteo." "Brother or not?" Estella gasped, stepping back. The floorboard creaked. Silence in the library. Suddenly the door flew open. Matteo stood there, his face flushed with rage. He saw Estella. His eyes narrowed into slits. "Ah," Matteo sneered. "The miracle worker." Dexter appeared behind him. He looked tired, his tie loosened. When he saw Estella, his expression hardened. "Go to your room, Estella," Dexter commanded. "She hears too much," Matteo murmured, stepping toward her. "Loose ends, Dom. You know the rules." Dexter stepped between them. The move was so fast it was a blur. He shoved Matteo back with a hand to the chest. "She is under my protection. Get out!" Matteo straightened his jacket, staring at Estella with a look that promised violence. "Be careful, Doctor. Accidents happen in big houses." Matteo left. The front door slammed, shaking the chandelier. Dexter turned to Estella. She was trembling. "I told you to stay in your wing," he said, but his voice lacked its usual bite. "He wants to hurt Leo," Estella whispered. "Your own brother." "It's complicated," Dexter said, rubbing his temples. He walked over to the liquor cabinet and poured a scotch. His hand was shaking slightly. Estella realized then that the monster was also a man under siege. He was fighting a war on the streets and a war in his own living room. "You need to leave," Estella said. "Send Leo away. Somewhere safe." "There is nowhere safe," Dexter said, turning to her. "Matteo is right about one thing. The Commission, the other families, they see a widower with a mute son as a target. They think I'm weak. They think the Valenti line ends with me." He looked at her, and a strange, desperate idea seemed to form in his eyes. He set the glass down. "There is only one way to stop Matteo from challenging my leadership and endangering Leo." "What?" Estella asked. "I need a wife," Dexter said. "A wife stabilizes my position. It shows I'm moving forward. It protects Leo by giving him a legal mother, someone the courts and the Commission have to respect." Estella laughed nervously. "Well, good luck on Tinder." Dexter walked toward her. He didn't stop until he was inches away. She had to tilt her head back to look at him. The air crackled with electricity. "I don't need a real wife, Estella. I don't need love. I need loyalty. I need someone who loves Leo." He took her hand. His skin was rough, calloused from years of violence, but his touch was surprisingly gentle. "Marry me," Dexter said. Estella pulled her hand back as if burned. "You're insane." "It's a business arrangement," he pressed, his eyes intense. "You marry me. You become Mrs. Valenti. You get protection that not even Matteo can touch. Leo gets a mother who can actually save him. In exchange, I wipe your family's debt completely, give you the deed to the clinic, and $5 million in an offshore account when we divorce in 5 years. And if I say no, then Matteo will eventually find a way to get to Leo. And when he's done with Leo, he will come for the witness. You." Estella looked at the man who had bought her life. She thought of Leo's small voice saying, "Blue bird." She thought of Matteo's shark-like grin. She realized she was already in the deep end. She might as well learn to swim. "5 years?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. 5 years, Dexter vowed. Strictly business, no touching, no emotions, just a contract. Estella took a deep breath. "I need it in writing." Dexter smirked, the first genuine expression of amusement she had seen on his face. "I'll have the lawyers here in the morning." But as Estella walked back to her room, she knew one thing for certain. In the Mafia, nothing was ever strictly business. And she had just sold her soul to the devil to save an angel. The prenuptial agreement was thicker than a medical textbook. Estella sat in Dexter's imposing library, surrounded by 3 lawyers in identical grey suits who smelled of expensive leather and skepticism. Dexter sat across from her, reading a newspaper, utterly detached from the life-altering transaction taking place. "Clause 14, Section B," one lawyer droned, sliding a page toward Estella, "stipulates that the marriage is exclusively for the legal guardianship status of Leonardo Valenti and the public image of the Valenti estate. There will be no expectation of consummation, cohabitation in the same bedchamber, or emotional entanglements. Any breach of this clause by Mrs. Valenti can result in the termination of the financial agreement." Estella felt sick. They were legislating intimacy, or the lack thereof. "And if Mr. Valenti breaches the clause?" she asked, her voice tight. The lawyer paused, looking nervously at Dexter over the top of his glasses. Dexter didn't lower the newspaper. "Mr. Valenti does not breach contracts," Dexter said flatly. Estella signed. With every stroke of the pen, she felt another layer of her old life peeling away. She wasn't Dr. Estella Ramirez anymore. She was an asset acquired in a merger. The wedding, 2 days later, was the grim opposite of every little girl's dream. There was no white dress, no church, no flowers. It took place in the study of a crooked judge on the Valenti payroll, with 2 hulking bodyguards acting as witnesses, Estella wore a simple navy suit she used for job interviews. Dexter wore black. He looked like he was attending a funeral. "Do you take this woman?" the judge mumbled, smelling faintly of gin. "I do," Dexter said, checking his phone as he said it. When Estella said, "I do," it felt like a lie that tasted like ashes. Dexter slipped a ring onto her finger. It wasn't a delicate diamond. It was a heavy platinum band, encrusted with sapphires so dark they looked black. It felt like a shackle. "It's done," Dexter said to the judge, tossing an envelope thick with cash onto the desk. "Erase the records. This stays between us until I decide to announce it." They drove back to the estate in silence. Estella stared out the rain-streaked window at the grey Chicago skyline. She was married to a king of the underworld, a man she feared, a man who had bought her loyalty to save his son. When they arrived back at the fortress-like mansion, reality was waiting on the doorstep. Franco, Dexter's head of security, a man whose nose had been broken so many times it resembled a squashed fig, was waiting by the front door. His face was pale. "Boss," Franco said, his voice low. "A package came. No return address. The bomb squad cleared it, but—" Dexter's demeanor shifted instantly. The bored husband vanished. The capo appeared. "Show me." They went to the mudroom. On a bench sat a plain cardboard box. Inside, wrapped in cheap tissue paper, was a child's raincoat. It was bright yellow, tiny and soaking wet. It smelled of harbor water, diesel fuel and rot. Estella gasped, covering her mouth. It was a grotesque reminder of the night Leo's mother died, the night he went mute. Dexter went utterly still. The air around him seemed to drop 20 degrees. He didn't touch the coat. He just stared at it, with eyes that burned with a cold, terrifying fury. "Matteo," Estella whispered. "No," Dexter said, his voice sounding like gravel in a mixer. "Matteo is blunt. He uses hammers. This—" He pointed a finger at the box, his hand shaking with restrained violence. "This is psychological. This is the O'Connell family from the South Side. They're testing the waters, seeing if I still bleed." He turned to Estella. The look on his face made her want to run. "You wanted to know if this was real, Estella? Welcome to the family. You and Leo are the targets now. That coat is a promise that they intend to finish what they started at the harbor." He grabbed her wrist, the first time he had touched her since putting on the ring. His grip was bruising. "You don't leave this house unless you are in an armored car with 4 guards. You don't open mail. You don't answer unknown numbers. You belong to me now, and everyone knows it. Which means everyone wants to break you to get to me." He released her and stormed off toward his study, barking orders into his phone to burn O'Connell's warehouses to the ground tonight. Estella stood alone in the hallway, wearing her wedding ring, staring at a wet yellow raincoat. That night, she locked her bedroom door, but she knew a lock meant nothing in this house. She was safe from the outside world, perhaps, but she was trapped inside with the most dangerous man in the city. A month passed. The Valenti estate settled into a bizarre high-tension routine. Estella became Leo's entire world. They spent hours every day in the solarium, which she had converted into a therapy space. Leo was blossoming. The terror that used to define his eyes was replaced by curiosity. "Estella, look, big dog outside," Leo said one Tuesday, pointing out the window at one of the guard dogs. It was a full sentence, 5 words. Estella picked him up and spun him around, laughing. "Yes, a very big dog, Leo. You did it." She looked up and saw Dexter standing in the doorway. He had been watching them. The intense, predatory look he usually wore was softened slightly. He almost looked human. "He asked for pancakes this morning," Dexter said quietly. To the chef, out loud. "He feels safe," Estella said, putting Leo down. The boy immediately ran to his father and hugged his leg. Dexter stiffened at first. He was unused to affection, but then awkwardly placed a large hand on Leo's head. It was a small gesture, but for Dexter Valenti, it was mountainous. "The announcement is tomorrow night," Dexter said, his eyes shifting back to Estella, the ice returning. "The annual Children's Hospital Gala. We are attending as Mr. and Mrs. Valenti. It will be our public debut." Estella's stomach clenched. "Do we have to? After the raincoat incident?" "Especially after the raincoat," Dexter cut in. "The O'Connell warehouses burned. The message was sent. Now we show them that their threats mean nothing. We show them strength. You will wear the dress Franco brought to your room. You will smile, you will hold my arm, and you will look like the happiest woman in Chicago." The gala held at the Ritz-Carlton was a glittering shark tank. The ballroom was filled with the city's elite, politicians on the take, corrupt police captains, and the heads of the 5 families. Estella wore a silk emerald gown that clung to her curves, fitted by a tailor who hadn't spoken English and carried a small pistol in her sewing kit. The sapphire ring weighed heavy on Estella's hand. Dexter was a force of nature in a tuxedo. He guided her through the room with a hand on the small of her back, a touch that burned through the silk, adhering to the contract yet feeling possessive. "Don't look nervous," he murmured in her ear as they approached a table of severe-looking men smoking cigars. "They smell fear like cheap cologne." Estella met the gaze of Sal Rossi, the head of the New York syndicate. He looked her up and down like he was appraising a racehorse. "So, this is the miracle worker," Rossi wheezed, blowing smoke in her direction. "Pretty thing. Doesn't look like much of a mother." "She's exactly what my son needs," Dexter said, his voice level but carrying a clear warning. "And she's a Valenti. Treat her with the same respect you would treat me, Sal. Or we'll have a problem." Rossi chuckled darkly. "Of course, Dom. Just making conversation." The night was exhausted. Estella felt like she was on a stage, performing a play where one wrong line could get her killed. The attack didn't happen at the gala. It happened leaving it. They were walking out the side exit toward their waiting armored SUV. Franco was ahead, scanning the alley. Dexter had his hand on Estella's back, urging her forward. A motorcycle engine screamed to life down the alley. 2 figures on a black sport bike tore toward them. The passenger raised something that looked metallic and lethal. "Down!" Dexter roared. He didn't just push Estella, he tackled her. He threw his entire body weight over hers, slamming her onto the cold concrete just as the pop, pop, pop of gunfire erupted. Bullets chipped the brick wall inches above their heads. Glass from the hotel door shattered. Franco and the other guards returned fire instantly, their guns booming in the confined space. The motorcycle swerved, the rider losing his nerve under the return fire, and sped off into the night. Silence returned, broken only by Estella's ragged gasps. Dexter pushed himself up, hovering over her. His eyes were wild, his hair disheveled. The cool, calculated Don was gone. A terrifying protector was in his place. "Are you hit?" he demanded, grabbing her shoulders and shaking her slightly. "Estella, answer me." I think I'm okay," she stammered, her ears ringing. Her knee was throbbing where it had hit the pavement, and her expensive dress was ruined. Dexter scanned her body frantically. He saw blood on her arm, a nasty graze from falling against the rough brick. His face contorted. He let out a low growl that wasn't human. He pulled her to her feet, his grip like iron. He didn't let go. He practically carried her to the SUV, shoving her inside. "Get us home," Dexter snarled at the driver. "Now." In the back of the speeding SUV, The no-touching clause evaporated. Dexter grabbed her injured arm, examining it with shaking hands. "It's just a scratch, Dexter," Estella said, trying to pull away, overwhelmed by his intensity. "They touched you," he whispered, his voice vibrating with a lethal rage she had never heard before. He wasn't looking at her. He was staring at the blood on her skin as if it were a personal insult. "I gave them my name. I put my ring on your finger. That was supposed to be a shield, and they dared to touch what is mine." He looked up into her eyes. The adrenaline had stripped away his masks. For the first time, Estella saw the raw, untamed violence that lived inside him, and to her shock, it was entirely focused on protecting her. "I will burn this entire city down to find who did this," he vowed, his face inches from hers. He reached into a compartment and pulled out a first aid kit. He began to clean the graze on her arm. His touch, previously so rough, was incredibly gentle. The duality of the man, the killer who could bandage a wound with tender care, left Estella breathless and terrified. She realized then that the contract was a lie. There was nothing strictly business about the way Dexter Valenti looked at her tonight. The golden cage had just become a war zone, and she was starting to realize her captor might be the only thing standing between her and oblivion. The armored SUV didn't head back to the estate. Instead, it sped north, leaving the city lights behind for the dark, winding roads of the forest. "Where are we going?" Estella asked. Her adrenaline was fading, replaced by a dull ache in her knee and a trembling in her hands. "The estate is compromised," Dexter said. He was stripping off his ruined tuxedo jacket, wincing slightly. "If they knew the exit route at the gala, they know the shift changes at the gates. We're going to the safe house." Estella looked at him. In the dim light of the dashboard, she saw a dark stain spreading on his white dress shirt, just above the ribs. "You're hit," she said, reaching out. Dexter swatted her hand away. "It's a graze. Focus on Leo." "Leo isn't here, Dexter. He's back at the estate with the nanny." Estella's voice rose to a panic. "Leo was moved 2 hours ago by a separate team. He is already there," Dexter said, his voice straining with pain. "I don't gamble with my son's life." They arrived at a secluded cabin near the Wisconsin border. It wasn't a rustic shack. It was a fortress of glass and timber hidden deep in the pines, surrounded by high-tech surveillance. Inside, the fire was already roaring. Leo was asleep on a massive leather sofa, curled up with his blue bird. Seeing him safe was the only thing that stopped Estella from collapsing. Franco, the head of security, locked the heavy steel doors behind them. "Perimeter is secure, boss. I have men in the trees." "Good," Dexter grunted. He walked to the kitchen island and poured a glass of whiskey, downing it in one swallow. He leaned heavily against the counter, his face pale. Estella didn't ask for permission. She grabbed the first aid kit from the bathroom and marched into the kitchen. "Sit down," she ordered. Dexter looked at her, his eyes narrowing. "I'm fine." "You are bleeding on the floor of a multi-million-dollar safe house. Sit down, Dexter, or I swear I will sedate you." Dexter paused. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. Few people gave orders to the Don of Chicago. Fewer still lived to tell about it. He sat on the bar stool. Estella unbuttoned his shirt. The wound was nasty, a deep gash across his ribs where a bullet had skimmed the skin. It needed stitches. "This is going to hurt," she said, threading a needle. "Do it," Dexter said through gritted teeth. As she worked, the silence between them changed. It wasn't hostile anymore. It was intimate. She could feel the heat radiating off his skin. She could feel the tension in his muscles. "Why did you cover me?" Estella asked softly, tying off the suture. "The contract said You just needed a mother for Leo. You didn't have to take a bullet for me." Dexter looked down at her. His eyes were dark pools of unreadable emotion. "You are a Valenti now, Estella. We protect our own." "Is that all I am? An investment you're protecting?" Dexter reached out, his hand cupping her cheek. His thumb brushed her lower lip. The air in the room grew heavy, charged with a magnetic pull that terrified them both. "You are complicated," Dexter murmured. He leaned in. Estella held her breath, her heart hammering against her ribs. He was dangerous, lethal, and the architect of her captivity. But in that moment, she didn't want to run. The radio on Franco's belt crackled, shattering the moment. Dexter pulled back instantly, the mask of the capo sliding back into place. "Boss," Franco said, walking into the room, looking grim. "We found the leak." "Who?" Dexter demanded, buttoning his blood-stained shirt. "It wasn't a guard," Franco said, hesitating. "It was the driver, Jimmy the Rat." We checked his phone. He sent the route to an encrypted number 10 minutes before we left the gala. "Where is he?" "In the basement, tied to a chair." Dexter stood up. The tenderness that had been there seconds ago vanished completely. He was death personified. "Stay here with Leo," Dexter said to Estella. His voice was cold enough to freeze the fire. "Dexter!" Estella pleaded, grabbing his arm. "Don't!" "He sold us out," Dexter said, pulling his arm free. "He put a target on my son. On you. There's only one punishment for treason." He walked to the basement door. Estella heard the heavy lock slide open, then shut. 10 minutes later, a single, muffled gunshot echoed through the floorboards. Estella squeezed her eyes shut, tears leaking out. She realized then that she hadn't just married a man. She had married a war, and the man she was starting to care for was a killer who wouldn't hesitate to pull the trigger. 3 days passed at the cabin. The snow piled up outside, trapping them in a strange, suspended reality. Dexter was distant after the execution in the basement. He spent hours on the phone, orchestrating a counterstrike against the O'Connell family. But when he was with Leo, the darkness receded. Estella watched them play chess by the fire. Night 2. "Here," Leo whispered, moving the piece. "Good move," Dexter said, pride evident in his voice. "You're trapping the king, Leo. Always trap the king before you strike." "Like you trapped Mommy?" Leo asked innocently. Estella choked on her tea. Dexter froze. "I didn't trap Estella," Dexter said carefully. "I found her." "She likes you," Leo stated, looking at the board. "She looks at you like she looks at chocolate." Estella blushed furiously. Dexter looked up at her, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. For a second, they were just a normal family. But the peace was a lie. The satellite phone on the table buzzed. It was a red line, only for emergencies. Dexter answered. "Valenti." His face went grey. The colour drained out of him so fast, Estella thought he was having a heart attack. "When?" Dexter whispered. "How?" He listened for another second, then threw the phone against the wall. It shattered. "Pack everything," Dexter roared, turning to Franco. "We leave now." "What happened?" Estella cried, running to scoop up a frightened Leo. "Matteo!" Dexter spat the name like poison. "While we were hiding here, my brother made his move. He went to the commission. He told them I was unfit, that I had fled the city in fear. He's seized control of the downtown territory. He's calling a vote tonight to strip me of my rank." "He can't do that," Estella said. "He can if I'm not there to stop him." Dexter grabbed his coat. "It's a coup. If I lose the vote, I lose everything. The business, the protection, the money. And if I lose the protection, the O'Connells will come for Leo within the hour. "We have to go back," Estella said, her fear for Leo overriding her fear of the violence. "No," Dexter said, checking the clip of his handgun. "I go back. You and Leo stay here. It's too dangerous." "If you go alone, you're walking into a trap," Estella argued. "Matteo expects you to come charging in. He'll have men waiting." "I don't have a choice," Dexter shouted. The raw desperation in his voice stopped her. "I will not let them take my son's future." He walked over to Leo, kissed him on the forehead, and then turned to Estella. He looked like he wanted to say something, maybe an apology, maybe a goodbye. Instead, he just nodded. "Keep the doors locked." Dexter and half the guards left in the SUVs, tires spinning in the snow. Estella was left with Franco and 2 other guards. The cabin felt huge and empty. 2 hours passed. Estella paced the floor. Something felt wrong. It was too quiet. "Franco," she called out, "check the perimeter again." "I just did, Mrs. Valenti. It's clear," Franco said from the kitchen. Suddenly the lights cut out. The cabin plunged into darkness. "Leo, get behind the sofa!" Estella screamed. The sound of shattering glass filled the room. Flashbangs detonated, blinding white light searing Estella's vision. Men in tactical gear rappelled through the skylights. The front door was blown off its hinges. Franco fired 2 shots before he was taken down, a taser prong hitting him in the neck. Estella scrambled in the dark, grabbing a heavy fire poker. She swung it wildly, connecting with a helmet. A man grunted, but another grabbed her from behind, pinning her arms. "We got the woman!" a voice shouted. "Check for the boy!" "No!" Estella screamed, kicking and biting. "Run, Leo! Hide!" She saw a flashlight beam sweep the room. It landed on the sofa. Leo was gone. "Where is the brat?" the leader demanded, grabbing Estella by the hair and forcing her to look at him. It wasn't the O'Connells. It was Matteo. Matteo Valenti smiled, his teeth white in the gloom. "Hello, sister-in-law." Dexter shouldn't have left his toys unattended. "Where is Dexter?" Estella spat at him. "Probably driving into an ambush I set on the highway." Matteo laughed. "But plans change. I realized I don't need to kill Dexter to control him. I just need leverage." He put a gun to Estella's head. "Call the boy out. If he loves you, he'll come." "Never," Estella hissed. Matteo cocked the gun. "I'll count to 3. 1, 2, stop!" The voice was small, high-pitched, but loud. Leo crawled out from inside the hollowed-out fireplace chimney where he had been hiding. He was covered in soot, shaking, holding his plastic blue bird. "Leo, no," Estella sobbed. "Let her go," Leo said. It was the most he had ever spoken. His voice wavered, but his chin was up. He looked exactly like his father. Matteo laughed, a cruel, barking sound. Well, the mute speaks. Dexter will be so proud right before I crush you both." "Grab them," Matteo ordered his men. "We're going to the warehouse. I want Dexter to see this live." They dragged Estella and Leo out into the snow. As they shoved Estella into the back of a van, she saw Franco lying in the snow, bleeding but conscious. He made eye contact with her. He moved his hand slightly, tapping his watch. The tracker. Dexter wasn't driving into an ambush. Dexter was coming. And when he arrived, God help anyone standing in his way. But as the van doors slammed shut, enclosing them in darkness, Estella pulled Leo into her arms. The boy wasn't crying. He was holding her hand, squeezing it tight. "Daddy is coming," Leo whispered in the dark. "Yes," Estella said, praying it was true. "Daddy is coming." But she knew that to get them back, Dexter wouldn't just have to be a father. He would have to become the monster everyone feared he was. The abandoned steel mill in the industrial district was a skeleton of rust and iron, groaning under the weight of the snowstorm. Inside, the air was freezing. Estella was tied to a chair in the center of the vast, empty floor. Leo was tied to a smaller chair beside her. His lips were blue from the cold, but his eyes were fixed on the large metal doors at the far end of the warehouse. Matteo paced back and forth, a bottle of champagne in one hand and a pistol in the other. 6 of his men stood guard, their breath misting in the cold air. "He's not coming, you know," Matteo sneered, stopping in front of Estella. "He knows it's a trap. Dexter is a calculator. He weighs the odds. A wife and a broken son against the entire organization. The math doesn't work." "He's not you," Estella said, her voice steady despite her terror. "He doesn't calculate family." Matteo struck her across the face. The sting was sharp, and she tasted blood. "I am the family now. I made the deal with O'Connell. I have the Commission's backing. Tonight, the Valenti reign ends, and the Valenti Empire begins." He raised his phone. "Time to stream the execution. Let the city see their new king." He tapped the screen to start recording. He pointed the gun at Dexter's son. "Say goodbye, Leo." Leo looked at the gun. He took a deep, shuddering breath. "Daddy," Leo whispered. Boom. The sound wasn't a gunshot. It was the sound of the massive steel loading bay doors being ripped off their hinges. An armored truck, black and massive, smashed through the metal as if it were paper. It drifted sideways, screeching to a halt in the center of the warehouse, shielding Estella and Leo from the guards on the right. Chaos erupted. Matteo screamed orders. "Kill them! Kill the driver!" Gunfire erupted from the truck's gun ports. 3 of Matteo's men dropped instantly. The driver's door kicked open. Dexter Valenti stepped out. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing tactical armor, carrying an assault rifle, and he looked like a demon rising from hell. He didn't take cover. He walked forward, firing with terrifying precision. 2 more guards fell. Matteo, panicked, grabbed Leo by the collar of his jacket and hauled him up, pressing the barrel of his gun against the boy's temple. "Stop!" Matteo screamed. "Drop it, Dexter, or the boy dies." Dexter froze. The rifle lowered slightly. The silence in the warehouse was deafening, broken only by the wind howling through the broken doors. "It's over, Matteo," Dexter said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried across the distance like a thunderclap. "Let him go." "You lost!" Matteo shouted, his eyes wild, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cold. "I have the boy. I have the power. You're nothing but a washed-up guardian." "Look around you," Dexter said calmly. Matteo blinked. He looked at the shadows in the rafters. Red laser dots appeared on his chest. 1, 2, 3. "Franco didn't die," Dexter said, "and I didn't come alone." You wouldn't," Matteo stammered, his hand shaking against Leo's head. "If they shoot me, my reflex pulls the trigger. Leo dies." It was a stalemate. A single twitch of a muscle would end the Valenti line. Dexter's eyes locked onto Leo's. He didn't look at the gun. He looked at his son. "Leo," Dexter said softly, "do you remember the game, the Bluebird?" Leo nodded, tears streaming down his face. "The bird is stuck," Dexter said. "Tell the bird to fly." Estella realized what he was doing. He was asking Leo to create a distraction, a sonic shock. Leo closed his eyes. He filled his small lungs with air. "No!" Leo screamed. It was a primal, ear-splitting scream, the scream of a boy who had found his voice and was using it to fight. Matteo flinched. The sudden noise in the dead silence startled him just enough. His aim wavered by an inch. Crack! A single shot rang out from Dexter's rifle. Matteo stiffened. A red hole appeared in the center of his forehead. He collapsed backward, his gun clattering harmlessly to the concrete. Dexter dropped his weapon and sprinted. He reached them before Matteo's body even hit the ground. He cut Leo's ropes with a knife, pulling the boy into his chest, burying his face in his son's hair. "I've got you," Dexter choked out. "I've got you." Estella watched them, sobbing with relief. Then Dexter turned to her. He sliced the ropes binding her wrists. He didn't pull her into a hug immediately. He cupped her face, his thumbs wiping away the blood on her lip where Matteo had struck her. His eyes were dark, searching, desperate. "Did he hurt you?" Dexter asked, his voice breaking. "I'm okay," Estella whispered. "We're okay." Dexter rested his forehead against hers. "I thought I lost you. When I saw the empty cabin, I died, Estella, I died." "We're here," she said, wrapping her arms around his neck, pulling him close. "We're right here." Surrounded by the ruin of his enemies, amidst the snow blowing in from the shattered doors, the Mafia Don kissed his wife. It wasn't a contract, it wasn't a deal, it was a promise. 5 years later, the sun set over Lake Michigan, casting a golden glow over the Valenti estate. The garden was no longer a barren stretch of manicured lawn. It was filled with rose bushes, a swing set, and a massive trampoline. Estella sat on the terrace, sipping wine. She looked at the calendar on her phone. Today was the date. 5 years. The expiration of the prenuptial agreement. According to the document she had signed in that cold library, today she was free. She could take her $5 million, her deed to the clinic, and leave. The glass door opened. Dexter walked out. He had grey at his temples now, but he looked less tired. The constant tension that used to define his shoulders was gone. He sat down across from her. He placed a thick envelope on the table. "The lawyers prepared the transfer," Dexter said. "The money is in your account. The flight to Ohio is booked for tomorrow morning if you want it." Estella looked at the envelope. Then she looked at the yard. 10-year-old Leo was running across the grass, chasing a golden retriever. He was laughing, shouting commands. "Sit, Buster! Stay!" Leo yelled clearly. Estella looked back at Dexter. He was watching her, his face impassive, but his hands were clenched tight under the table. He was terrified. "You kept your end of the bargain," Estella said. "You saved my family. You saved me." "And you saved my son," Dexter said. "And you saved me." Estella picked up the envelope. She felt the weight of it. Freedom. A fresh start. She ripped it in half. Dexter's eyes widened. "I think there's a problem with the contract," Estella said, tearing the papers into smaller pieces. "What is the problem?" Dexter asked, his voice dropping to a rasp. "Clause 14, Section B," Estella quoted from memory. "No emotional entanglements." She stood up and walked around the table. She sat on his lap, wrapping her arms around him. "I breached that clause about 4 years and 11 months ago," she whispered. Dexter let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for half a decade. He wrapped his arms around her waist, burying his face in her neck. "Then we need a new contract," Dexter murmured against her skin. "No contract," Estella said, pulling back to look him in the eye. "Just a promise. Till death do us part." "No," Dexter corrected her, kissing her deeply, the kiss of a man who owned the city, but knew his true wealth was holding him. "Not even death will part us, Estella. You are a Valenti, and Valentis are forever." Leo's laughter rang out across the garden, loud and free, echoing into the twilight. And so, the speech therapist who healed a silent boy ended up healing the heart of the most dangerous man in Chicago. Estella didn't just find her voice, she found her kingdom. From a drowning clinic to the throne of the underworld, she proved that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't a gun, it's love, patience, and the courage to speak up when everyone else is silent. What did you think of Dexter and Estella's story? Would you have stayed after the 5-year contract was up, or taken the money and run? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this mafia romance saga, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new story. We release new dramatic audiobooks every Tuesday and Friday. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next chapter.